How do you know the person about to inject your face is actually licensed to do it? Across the country right now, providers are getting arrested, and most of their patients never saw it coming. So today I sit down with Dr. Judith Borger, a physician with over a decade of experience in aesthetic medicine, who just got her North Carolina practice Medspa board certified and has a lot to say about what is driving this wave of arrests. We're getting into the Korean version of Botox too, Letybo, what the science actually says, and whether the hype is real. You need to listen to the end because Dr. Borger shares what happened when her colleague's application revealed a safety gap that in a real emergency could have actually hurt someone. So let's get into it. Hi, this is Dr. Kate D, and I am back today with Dr. Judith Borger. So Judith, thanks so much for being on the podcast today.
I'm so excited to be back.
So first of all, there's been this spate of arrests. I mean, and actually, I'm kind of excited to see that because for, the 12 or so years almost that I've been doing this, there haven't been very many, and we've just been watching more and more and more illegal spas pop up and like, who's doing anything about it, right? So tell me, like, what have you seen and what kind of inspired you to kind of join the Medspa board?
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree. Not that I love people getting arrested, but I do like the idea that the medical boards and the authorities are really sort of finally stepping in, because I think there was a lot of turning blind eyes to a lot of things. Mm-hmm. So, as I said, I wish nobody harm, but it was really actually patients that were getting harmed. So I do think that it's kind of hopefully ushering in a little new era where maybe compliance is a little bit more on the forefront and doing things legally. And so, yes, there's been this whole arrest. And I think, right, when we really think about what these arrests are, they fall under different categories, right? So, of course, there's this like the egregious kind of arrests that everybody would agree that are completely illegal, where people were going to somebody's backyard shed or somebody's hotel room or in the back of some, nail salon or something. And I think that's sort of category one, right? Where really most probably fairly conscientious consumers should be like, wait, is this really what should be happening? That this person like wants to see me in their kitchen? The second part, I think, what I'm really seeing is a gross category, and I think this is where the Medspa board really comes in, is a lot of arrests recently about misrepresentation, right? Where people were pretending to be licensed when they weren't, where people were pretending their establishments were licensed when they weren't. But I think really that it was sort of practitioners either practicing outside of their scope of practice, outside of their license, or without a license, while pretending that they were a proper kind of med spa. And then there was even some high-end cases where things were done wrong. So I think that's kind of where things like the Medspa board really come in, which does a great job, really, I would almost say being like a seal or standard for the highest quality of care. That, by being Medspa board certified and by getting Medspa board certified, we're kind of saying to our current patients and all of our future patients and clients, hey, look, we are really adhering to this highest standard and you don't have to worry. Because, we are really doing the utmost in excellence and care, in oversight, in sourcing, and being able to deal with complications. So that really, especially I think, boutique physician-led med spa that has always prided itself in quality, highest sort of standards, it's like wonderful to kind of have a formal seal or formal way to quantify that and show it to the world. And I'm hoping that it will build a lot of trust as we grow this, or as you grow this, with patients that can really recognize it and sort of say, hey, look, this is Medspa board certified, so I don't have to worry if somebody unlicensed practices there, if they use illegal Botox, if even just like oversight isn't being given.
I think having a uniform standard and a uniform badge, that's really easy to identify. Okay, Medspa board certified, people can identify that really quickly. It is really hard. So people have asked me, okay, so these are all the questions that I need to ask. What if they answer this? What if they answer that? And I will tell you, I personally, when I've tried to figure out whether a spa is legit or not, it's about a 15-minute phone call, right? For me to ask the front desk enough questions to figure out whether people actually have the right credentials and if there's a medical director and stuff. And so having that badge will be just easily identifiable, like, oh, okay, they're certified. And I think that also, that will bring in more patients, who that's what they want. They're coming to you because, you are safe and you're offering really high-end services that are, vetted and careful. And I mean, there are so many things, for example, in my place that I won't offer because they're too risky. And they're so common out there. But it's my license and my sleep at night that I would lose if I were offering any of these things. And like a lot of these places offering that, it's like, there's no one with any medical knowledge to know how risky that is. And, even if it's, 1 in 100, risk, that's a lot. How many patients do you see in a week? More than that. So like, can you imagine harming people that often? So like, this should be a symbol where people will be able to recognize like, okay, it doesn't guarantee a result. I think that's like a big thing also for me as part of this, is it's not like you're guaranteeing that you're going to love the results or you're going to get, but it really is a guarantee that the people there actually care about the safety and the quality of the care that they're giving.
And I think most of us would actually probably think in the worst case scenario that is way more important, right? You'd rather need to come back for another syringe of something than like have permanent harm or disfigurement, because really safety should be so important. And the other thing that I'm also hoping is that as it grows, that people see it also as a way, like you said, to search for people. Like, for example, I have my friend who's now in, a town where I know nobody, who's saying, I want to get some filler done or want to get a laser treatment done. And instead of her finding the person with the most TikTok followers, is to actually like find a person where I can safely say, this looks like a very good, reputable place. Why don't you try them out?
Right. And I have to say, so, there are groups, you and I are both part of a group of doctors who do this. And a lot of times we will pose a question to the group like, hey, my patient's moving to California. Is anyone in the Bay Area who could see this patient? And that way, you're referring to somebody who you can trust. And I think in this way, this will be a way to bring that to the public, to be able to just show people. And so like, I think like if you break it down to trust, safety, and money, it's kind of a win-win, Yeah. I mean, the example of safety, I have to like tell you about this debate I had once. This was with another med spa person who had a ablative laser that they did, very aggressive ablative resurfacing. And I was like, well, that's so risky. And they're like, yeah, but you do one big ablative, and then you're done, one and done. And I'm like, well, but then you've got all these people who might have scarring and hyperpigmentation and other issues that are coming back. I mean, you're not done with some subset of those people. And if I were that patient, I wouldn't want that, right? Whereas if you do a non-ablative resurfacing, that's much, much safer, much less downtime. Sure, you need 3 of them. But I personally would rather have 3 of them than go through one.
If you ask the person with the permanent scarring, they would agree, right?
Absolutely, right?
Again, like they're like, probably initially it sounds great, one and done. Yeah. But then if you ask the person that has the scar or that has the hyperpigmentation, they're probably like, look, instead of having this forever, I would have loved to come back 2 more times.
And I would never want to be the person who did that to them. And the thing is, So if you've been listening to the show, you know I've got stories for days about what goes on in med spas. I finally put them all in a book. It's called Medspa Mayhem. I wrote it because I got tired of hearing about people getting hurt by providers who have no business holding a syringe. You'll read about real patients, real nightmares, but more importantly, you'll know exactly what to look for when you walk into any med spa and what questions to ask. It's part expose, part survival guide, and it might just save your life. Medspa Mayhem will leave you informed, entertained, and a little shocked at what's really going on behind the business of the aesthetics industry. The link is in the episode description. Read it before you book your next appointment, because beauty should never come at the cost of your safety. That if you don't know the risks, and if you're not managing your own complications, then you don't know. And so everyone has a different risk tolerance. But I think that, one of the signs of quality, the med spa board doesn't tell doctors what to do, right? It doesn't tell the med spa how to practice, but they make sure that it is properly managed. And, there's a medical director who's actually caring about these things, right? Mm-hmm. And then, at least, there's somebody who has medical judgment helping to make these decisions. And it's not just commodity driven, because a lot of illegal places, they're buying cheap knockoffs because they can't buy the real thing because the real companies won't sell to them, right? So it's even more dangerous because they're not using the real device, and there's just so much more risk in that. So I got to ask you, since you just went through this process not that long ago, how long did it take you to fill out the application? How long did it take to actually jump through those hoops?
Yeah, it really did not take me very long. I'm going to be full transparent with all the listeners. I did have a little glitch with my username and password that took a couple emails to resolve, but once that was resolved, so because I also don't want to paint a picture of oh yeah, it's everything. So once I had my username and password issue resolved, it was really a one sitting kind of write it all down. I just had to get everybody's licenses from my office manager, who keeps that all handy. And what I really appreciated, and I'm going to mention a colleague of mine here who also got certified. When you and I talked, you reviewed our application, it did not, everything passed. We went right through. But what I really appreciated was how good of an experience she had. And she had a little too little hyaluronidase. And she really said to me, I really appreciated how Dr. D sat down with me and we made a plan of exactly what we needed. So, I would say for me, it was very fast to do the application because we had all of our things handy and binders and folders, filed somewhere, as you should. But sometimes, again, the more people you have, the harder it gets to find. But I really want to point out how my colleague really found it a very educational experience, even though she initially had a shortcoming in one of the sections. So I think I also want to kind of say that to people that might be scared that what if I don't pass? Are people going to report us? That she really commented on how supportive she felt like you were and how it really elevated her in that one area that she didn't meet right away, elevate her standard of care to what is really best practices, because she truly, being a newer practitioner, was not aware how many vials. Again, I was I think I have 24 vials or some insane number, right? But she was oh, I didn't know I needed more than four,
All you need to have is have one event when you realize you'd rather have that safety net, knowing that you might use that many. We require 16 at least. And the interesting thing is that, first of all, there's no punishment for not getting that. There's zero punishment, right? So if you're oh gosh, I got to do this or that, I didn't realize that was best. No big deal. Order a few more vials. People realize it is expensive, right? So we're talking about hyaluronidase, which is used to treat a vascular occlusion. It's also used to do touch-ups if you have something you want to adjust that. But that's used in much smaller amounts for a touch-up, right? I had one person who was inquiring, who has not applied yet, but what she said is, well, I have 4 friends in the general area, or it was either they had 4 locations or they had 4, I think it was 4 friends, and they each had 4 vials of Hylenex each. So if we really needed it, we could get it. And I'm Okay, that's not how this works. When
it's a Sunday afternoon and one of them is at the beach and the other one is at the baby shower, right? And you really need to dissolve this, and this time it's tissue.
And this is happening to you, you do not want to get in your car and drive around town begging people for Hylenex. You really just need it in your fridge so you can treat it right away. And so that's why I said, I was like, when this does happen to you, and it's very rare. So, I mean, we've had one ever in the history of my office. It was recognized right away. It was treated right away. But I think we went through 12 or 13 vials of Hylenex that time. And you don't want to try to be stingy with it, right? So anyway, the point is, though, that we're here to make sure that patient safety is number one, right? And there's no punishment for not,
that's kind of what I wanted to bring up, right? Because I don't want people to feel like, oh my God, like if there's one thing on the form, like it's not we always worry about this with like the medical board. It's a board, but it's a friendly board. And the idea is really to make everybody be very safe. So that's why I really wanted to bring out my friend who, really felt like it was a very supportive and educational part, even though on her initial, application, she did fall short on one thing. It's not like the medical board that are going to suspend you. It's really an idea that, you're creating a standard as the Medspa board that helps elevate everybody, and that hopefully that standard will become the gold standard. And, people are going to aspire to that. And also we have some consistency, right?
Yeah. And I thought that we as a group, we came up with some really good national standards. It's the same everywhere. I mean, obviously corporate practice of medicine laws are different in the different states. And then there is a difference between about half the states allow nurse practitioners to practice independently, half don't. So that's fine. Like I'm not enforcing anything. I'm just like, that's fine. You can totally be. But if you're a nurse practitioner in a state where you can't practice independently, then you absolutely have to have a supervising or collaborating physician. That's just the law, right? Mm-hmm. But other than that, there's no difference really. And so you can expect the same level of quality, transparency, safety, that emphasis anywhere that's certified. And so it's a pretty easy process to go through. And I agree, so the thing though is that also it's helpful because if you have to write down everybody's license number, well, you're certainly going to find out if one of them has let their license lapse. So, and that happens, like, and even me, like I did not let my license lapse, but what my manager texted me not that long ago, like, hey, it looks, we have an old license for you. And I was like, of course of course I did that. But the one they had laminated in the office wasn't the new one.
Well, that's exactly what I think what took me the longest is to remind my office manager, being like, and I did it at the end of the year, being like, hey, per protocol at the end of every year, we're supposed to ask every single one of our practitioners to give us a copy of their new license. Have you done that? And have they responded,
Right. And that, since it's part of the application and you have to renew every year, you just have to update your information every year. Like, we're just kind of part of that same process you have to do anyway. And so, our hope, right, as we launch, as we get bigger, is that national directory gets more attention, that we are able to, link with as many spas that are, operating at that high level as possible, and that we can elevate the whole industry. Like that's my goal. And I'm not looking for all these places and people to get arrested. I think having an actual board with standards will actually help those people who don't know, like who are not really operating legally, to realize, well, I can't get certified. I don't meet any of those. Like it might at least even educate some of them or prompt them to either become legal or stay within the scope of their practice. I mean, so my hope is to have a positive influence on this in both directions, and educate the public so the public understands what these places are doing, because, all the public sees mostly are the headlines of several women arrested in Florida, in Arizona, and apparently in North Dakota just recently. It's just, rather than throwing our hands up, we can do something about it, right?
Yeah, and I think that's like when I look through some of the recent cases that I could find, and of course there's so many of them, unfortunately, a lot of those, including the one in North Dakota, was people pretending to have licenses when they don't. Right. And like you said, the problem with that is they couldn't even get Medspa board certified. But like you mentioned earlier, a lot of the safe and direct to Medspa products, like we have to give our DEA license, we have to give our license. So it creates this whole spiral where then even if they wanted to, they could not even buy true products. They have to almost buy the black market counterfeit, whatever, because the Allergan Galderma, they're not going to sell to them.
Right.
And so it creates this whole cycle that's, really, really unfortunate, really, for the consumers in the end.
So someone asked me recently about the Korean toxin and is it going to take America by storm? And
you mean Letybo?
That's what I said. I was like, you mean Letybo? I don't know about by storm, but my question to you is, do you use Letybo? Do you like it? What's your take on it?
Yeah, we do use Letybo. I use it in my practice, and it is actually popular because it's fast onset, right? And, we have talked about this whole K-Tox wave and K-Beauty. And, K-Beauty is kind of taking the US by storm, but only sort of, right?
Yeah.
Because I think when I really think about K-Beauty and you think about the sales numbers, a lot of the way K-Beauty has taken over, it's really in the creams, in the serums that you can now buy at Ulta, at Walgreens, at CVS, at Target, at Sephora, that really, I think, in the sort of consumer skincare brand business, K-Beauty is like, what, a $2 billion industry? And I just recently read that, don't quote me on that number, that K-Beauty the US has overtaken whatever was, I think France before that was the top importer of Korean skincare, that they have now overtaken, which is really remarkable, especially given the tariffs and the other economic climate. So I think, Korean beauty is huge. It also seems that the home gadget market that is very Korean beauty focused has really exploded. But interestingly enough, I don't really know that the Korean products, as far as devices and injectables, have really overtaken sort of the US market. Now, that being said, I have used Letybo for probably close to a year now. We like it. I think, again, because there was this huge push towards all the Korean skincare. And honestly, a second reason is, and this is also how we make decisions. The rep that now reps it was one of my reps that I've had a relationship with for a decade. And, they all jump companies. So some of it is also that rep relationships are important. And so she was like, try Letybo. And, it is a fast onset. It's normally about a good day faster than what you would get with your traditional Botox. So people like it. Has it even in our practice taken a huge share of the market? No, it's just the next new thing that we're offering. That being said, I don't know how big of a market share they have. I mean, I think that's kind of what happens is whenever a new toxin that gets launched nationwide comes out, they grab a piece of the market share. But I think by no way are they dethroning some of the heavy hitters such as Allergan and Galderma and, the top toxins in the market. And I think as more and more, toxins become available, first of all, I think not all of us are going to carry all of them, because it's just going to get too crazy to have all the different brands. So we're going to have to choose. And then I think, the slice, unless they do very good direct to consumer marketing, it's hard to create a big buzz when really I think it's still a medical procedure, which is why I think direct to consumer has kind of taken off more, because there's apparently a million, again, driven by TikTok mainly. There's a million little electro wand gadgets that are K-Beauty that are now apparently a huge market, mainly driven through influencers and social media and direct to consumer selling. But I honestly don't know that the Korean, even like, laser brands or injectable brands have really like made that big of a dent in the US market as far as I know. What do you think about that?
I think that's a really, so let me just stick to Letybo for 1 second here. And so from my point of view, the toxin, the active part of the toxin is the same for all of the approved toxins. Okay. So Botox was the first one. And so as they've come out, they've had different qualities compared to Botox. And so from my point of view, every new one that's come out, I compare to Botox. And if I think it's a little better than Botox, I will offer that. But if it's not as good as Botox or about the same and the same price, I won't. I just don't bother, right? So in my office, we have Botox and Dysport because when Dysport came along, I thought I really liked it better. And I was at a lecture a number of years ago now that was comparing all the toxins and how they're all the same 2-unit protein that has the active part of the toxin, right? And they all have a different protein coat around them. And whereas Zeaman has no protein coat, but the rest of them all have different size protein coats. And when you put it in solution, the protein coat floats away and you're just how much of that toxin is in the vial. And at this lecture, they were saying, the amount by weight of the 2, subunit active toxin was highest for Dysport in the vial. And then next was Botox. And then Juvo's almost the same as that. Daxi's almost the same as that. And then Xeomin was the lowest. And that's basically how long it lasts, is how much is in there. So, that's why Dysport lasts a little longer. It's a little fast. That's my opinion. I learned that from this lecture, and that's been my experience. So when Juvo came along, everybody was like, it's about the same. Xeomin, most people feel that it doesn't last as long. Some people argue with that. No, so with Letybo, my prep for this was to do like a deep dive on the science of it. And it's so similar to Botox, it's ridiculous. It is ridiculously similar. So the amount of toxin is the same. So when you read online, people are selling it that it acts a little quicker and lasts a little longer, maybe.
Well, I think we have seen the little bit faster onset. I mean, I got to say that's something that patient has commented on. And I think it does have to do that. A lot of the newer ones are like, again, they have fewer side chains. And so maybe they do penetrate into the enzyme and block acetylcholine a little bit faster, and then of course, depending on what your tier status is with Allergan, I think the advantage to some practices is also that some of the smaller brands, like the volumetric discounts for smaller practices, unless you're like top tier status with Allergan, is a little bit more advantageous, of course, because they're smaller, they're launching.
Well, that's what I wanted to mention that. So I'm glad you brought that up, because I think a lot of consumers don't know that loyalty program with these different companies will definitely influence the choice of toxin that people offer, right? So Allergan makes Botox and they have a loyalty program, kind of like a frequent flyer program. So the more you buy, the less expensive it is, and the nicer they are to you, right? And so Galderma makes Dysport, same deal, right? And so if you are a heavy user of either of those companies or the other companies, your discount's pretty decent. So, it costs you less. So if you transfer a big volume of your patients to a new product from another company, then it's very possible your price of those things will go up if you really change that significantly. So there is a big, heavy influence of these companies to like keep using their product. And, so that's why I really try to use just the real scientific thing. Like, is it better than Botox? Okay. If it's inferior, I don't want to use it. That doesn't make sense. No. But if it's the same and cheaper, why not? I mean, basically there's no advantage. The Korean company, I mean, it's pure, it's safe, it's not contaminated, it's not weird, So is it hype about K-beauty? I personally would use it interchangeably with Botox. I mean, I don't think the Koreans know anything different, than any other scientific lab. It's a protein, And then you just have to figure out, like, can you afford to switch? It's a business decision, which again, like I try not to drive my medical decisions by, a business thing. But as a consumer, I think you should feel very confident to get either one.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, and I think that's a really important thing to mention, right? We have heard a lot about fake products coming from Asia, Korea, China, Russia, wherever. This is not the same. Like, this is a product that was developed in Korea, has been used throughout Asia, but they went through the whole rigorous, FDA approval, which is a big, rigorous kind of thing, right? And they got approval. And so, again, I agree with you that, business decisions shouldn't sway us, but then we all have to have a profit to stay open and have a mission and no money, no mission. And, what I've actually started doing is that, because we offer quite a few different toxins. So we're probably best here with Galderma, and we actually use a lot of Xeomin. And the reason is, for us, is Mertz is in North Carolina. So there's some sort of loyalty to them. And then the fact that it was the first one that was really purified, our very how do I say this? Health conscious, want everything natural patients with all the Gwyneth Paltrow marketing feel very confident being injected with the toxin, that goes along with the baby's amber teething necklace. You know what I mean? That is sort of the one with the fewest accessory, potentially immunogenic proteins.
Right.
So for that reason, Xeomin, at least where we are, has actually pretty good following, which kind of makes sense. That they would take a little bit more natural look and a little bit of movement as the trade-off to feeling like they get injected with the most purified.
As a scientist, I'm like, that's a nice notion, but it's still botulism toxin.
I completely agree.
And although it is true that, Botox has more proteins on it, so more potential for immunogenicity, but I've not seen any data actually to say that it actually is. Causing an immune response, antibodies to the toxin, that's very, very, very rare. And it does happen to Xeomin also. And I've never seen anything where it says it happens more with any of the other toxins. So and back when I did trial Xeomin, this is ages ago, I had a patient who had, an immune response to Botox, and she wanted to try Xeomin, and she had the exact same response to Xeomin. It wasn't fun. So I was like, okay, I don't win.
I agree with the scientists in you, and in the practitioner in me. I just validate the patient's journey and their concerns about the potential for high inflammation and extra foreign products. And we just support them in the decision in choosing the tox that they want.
Well, I think we've covered Letybo now, so that was really interesting. I'm going to bring up a new product from Galderma. Have you heard? And I have no idea how to pronounce it. Relfitis?
I have not.
Well, my rep had told me about that. I want to say at least 2 years ago. I mean, it's been a long time.
Well, I mean, probably I'd heard things about that it was a theoretical thing, but I did not know that it was a ready to market kind of thing.
So what it is, it's a brand new neurotoxin. So it's not the same as Dysport. It's a new one.
It comes in a liquid, right?
Botulinum toxin A, and it comes as a liquid, and it's going to be in pre-filled syringes, and it's actually already available internationally in 20 different markets, and it is very close to being FDA approved in the United States. They have been jumping through all the FDA hoops, which, as you know, takes years. And so recently, the most recent hoop was this month, and I don't know. I suspect it's going to be very soon. And the interesting thing is that it's supposed to be much faster than all the other neurotoxins, I guess, because its form in the liquid. I'm not sure. And it's supposed to last 6 months.
And it's supposed to be an injectable as well, right?
It's an injectable. It's just pre-filled in syringes. You won't need to reconstitute it. And so I know not much more than that, other than it's already popular in Europe and other places. And I just think, there's constant innovation. There's constantly new things. And, and of course, as a scientist, I'm very interested in the actual molecule and the science of it. But then, anything that's new and different and interesting, it's like, well, what advantage is there? How much does it cost? How much is faster? Is one day,
how much is
it
that worth, right?
more?
That's also the question, like, how much is one day worth? Like, right? Because chances are it's probably going to be more expensive, and it'd be more expensive to ship for sure because it'll be heavier.
Right. So it's just interesting because we don't know. We don't know enough. It's coming down the pike. You heard it first here, people.
I know. You're like, I feel so unprepared now.
Well, I know I had heard about this, that it was coming, but these things sometimes take forever. So it was like waiting for Sculptra to get its new FDA approval. That took, I don't know, like 8 years or something at least. And it's like, well, what am I, can't sit around waiting for that.
Now that you say it, I do think a couple of years ago, I kind of heard inklings and then nothing ever happened, right? But like you said, you're a scientist, and I'm too. I mean, I've been part of a whole bunch of FDA trials as a principal investigator. And so it's actually really interesting, you being a scientist and like, I've spent so much time on the trial front to actually always look at where the outcomes actually derived, what were the methods that were used, like to really dig to that level of an approval or a new indication. And because that all makes the difference too in the data that we get.
Yeah. Yeah. So, well, I'm excited. I'm looking forward to this, at least to try it, see if it lasts that long on me.
Yeah. Well, because honestly, like Daxxify initially came out promising that sort of duration. And to be honest, in my practice, we never got those promises fulfilled.
So here's my skepticism there. Once the neurotoxin causes that paralysis, that connection is lost between the nerve ending and the muscle. Okay, that's gone. It retracts. And so over time, your body sends out new little connections, and over time they reconnect. And eventually that muscle gets to turn on again. Okay. So I do not understand how anything in the vial or in the syringe is going to change your biologic activity inside your body 6 months from now. I don't understand how that's possible. And honestly, when Daxxify came out, I'm really annoying to the reps. And I was like, I want to talk to your chief scientific officer. So they sent me this, person. And I'm like, so tell me, how does that do that? And all they could tell me was, oh, well, there's different proteins in the vial and that, blah, blah, blah. It changes its activity. And I'm like, okay, there's different proteins in the vial. You put it in today. 4, 5, 6 months from now, those proteins are somehow preventing those connections to come back. That's not reasonable, right? That doesn't make any sense, right? So I am curious about this new thing. What is it about it? Could it really last longer? Is it just a higher dose, which is possible? I don't know. So I'm very curious. I'm excited, but I'm always asking those questions. And I think also, just to get back to our, Medspa board thing, is that if you have a geeky science person like me, who's your medical director, right? They're going to ask these questions, and they're going to be able to deliver to you services that have been, vetted. If you have someone who just believes whatever the rep tells them, which believe me, they do not tell the truth most of the time, okay, and doesn't know what questions to ask because they don't know the physiology of how this happens, then they're just going to buy it and sell it to you and tell you the sales pitch that the rep told them, who's not even a medical person, right? So there are other big, kind of overarching advantages to have, someone who's asking those questions. So that's why I think, for anybody who's still listening to us at this moment, I think that, consider getting Medspa board certified and join us and help change the industry. And if you are a consumer, ask those questions, make sure that there's an actual medical director and make sure everybody's licensed, or look for the Medspa board certified badge. So
yes.
And Judith, thanks so much for getting certified and talking about your process with me. I really appreciate your talking with me today.
I appreciate having you back on, and hopefully, this is going to spread the way it's supposed to. And I can't wait to sort of hear and see and watch the new evolution of it. So thank you for doing like what you do also for the industry and for patients and for practitioners by really helping them deliver the best care to their patients.
Oh, thank you. If you found this helpful, do me a favor and share it with a friend who's considering any aesthetic treatments. Subscribe so you don't miss the next one, and drop a comment telling me your biggest takeaway. I actually read them all. Let's keep each other safe and elevate the standards in the med spa industry.